This FedGov Today program is sponsored by AppGate. On this edition of FedGov Today, borrowing the Pentagon's playbook for your cyber success. Agentic AI adoption is up next at Foggy Bottom and Tech for Life Phase 2. State Department CIO Kelly Fletcher's here. Welcome to FedGov Today in Washington, D.C. and around the world on the American Forces Network. I'm Francis Rose. The Pentagon will revamp its cyber workforce structure as part of a four-pillar strategy from the new CIO there, Kirsten Davies. She told you about it on FedGov Today last week. Other agencies say they'll borrow from the Pentagon's playbook for the cyber workforce and other cyber efforts. Leo Taddeo is CEO of AppGate. Leo, welcome. Thanks for joining me today.
Great to see you.
What are the best practices that you've seen when agencies borrow something that another agency is doing in the cyber realm?
Well, that's a great question, Francis. First of all, it's great to be back. Thanks for having me. Borrowing from the agencies who are doing it the best is probably the smartest way to go. So you'd want to follow agencies like Air Force and some of the other Department of War, Department of Defense organizations that have tested the solutions, that have tested the practices, especially because in defense the conditions are a little harsher and the requirements are a little more stringent and the adversary is a little bit more active. So I think if you're going to borrow from defense agencies because they have the harder requirements and do more rigorous testing.
I'm struck by the number of agencies in the civilian side that are using the terminology too when it comes to cyber. Compute at the edge, security at the edge, that kind of thing. In the law enforcement agencies, your former agency, the FBI, and so on. What does that mean about the way that civilian agencies are approaching not just cyber, but technology mission delivery in general?
Well, I think a lot of the requirements are the same. There are very sophisticated adversaries after both defense and civilian agencies. There are very high scale requirements, meaning you have to service a lot of customers or a lot of warfighters. And I think the global reach of each agency is also very similar. So you're seeing a borrow from the best strategy because it works, and that's where we get the most efficient deployment of cyber dollars.
One of the things we talked about before we went on the air, you said disconnected operations are a mission requirement for the entire government, not just for the Pentagon. What does that mean about the way that people think about what they're building infrastructure-wise, how they're training people and getting them ready to use newer technology, that kind of thing?
Well, many commercial enterprises can operate with dependencies on other commercial vendors. In our view, we've designed solutions, and we believe the best approach is for the commercial enterprises and the most sensitive defense customers use an architecture that is self-contained and not dependent on third-party cloud or other solutions provided by another vendor. We don't believe that relying on a separate vendor is the architecture for defense and federal civilian agencies. We've taken a different approach.
How are threat actors using artificial intelligence tools impacting the way that organizations and government should be thinking about all of these things that we've covered so far?
So artificial intelligence is cutting both ways for both defense and for offense in cyber. It's fundamentally compressing the time, cost, and skill required to conduct sophisticated attacks, and it's reducing the amount of time defenders have to respond to sophisticated attacks. So we've taken an approach where instead of trying to solve the underlying problem, we're giving the customer more time to solve it. So if the customer can cloak their environment, they're actually hiding it from the adversary, and as a result, the adversary can't attack what it can't find. And we think that's a mitigating control while we actually do the patching and vulnerability mitigation. That's actually the long-term solution. But right now we're in a crisis of time, and we've taken the approach of let's cloak what's vulnerable while we patch it so that the adversary doesn't have access to it.
What other factors might be able to drive that time?
Well, the other factors that might be able to drive the compression of the time is the skills required. So if you think about what AI can do, it can make a somewhat competent threat actor into a very sophisticated threat actor. So you have actually more adversaries than you had before. The amount of training and experience is not as high as it once was, if you have a very capable AI tool to help you.
Leo, it's great to see you again. Thanks for joining me today.
Great seeing you. Thanks, friends.
You can read more about everything Leo and I talked about on today's show page at FedGovToday.com. Coming up, agentic AI adoption's up next at Foggy Bottom. State Department CIO Kelly Fletcher's here when FedGov Today continues in a moment.